Right, welcome to Chutwak Park. Once again, we're here with Bernice Jensen, and she's going to be teaching us a few things about fishing history in the area, tools used, tell a story, help us learn about making hemp rope that was originally used for making fish nets. And I am so happy to be here once again working on our educational programs for the Adams River Salmon Society. Kuksjam.
Okay, White Kuhayatip in Secwepemc, Bernice Jensen. Hello everyone, I'm Bernice Jensen. I work at the Kamloops Aboriginal Friendship Society, and I work in partnership with School District 73. And today we're going to talk about traditional fishing. And we have another guest here, and we'll let her introduce herself as well.
Hello, I'm Brianna Narcisse. I'm the summer student this year for the Adams River Salmon Society.
Kuksjam.
Okay, so we're going to get started right away. We have a couple of things that we're going to do, but first of all, we're going to talk a bit about some of the salmon in the area, or the fish in the area, and we're going to talk a bit about the tools and technology that was used, the harvesting technique, and also the drying methods as well. So first of all, we are really fortunate because we live in the interior of BC, where we have a lot of lakes and water systems. We have the Adams River off of the, that's from the Adams Lake, and we have one of the largest salmon runs on the west coast with the Adams River sockeye run. So Brianna is going to tell us what salmon come to this location.
There's 5 salmon that come to this location: coho, pink, chinook, sockeye, and chum.
Okay, so we are really fortunate because the water systems that are here in this area are all connected to the Thompson River, and the Thompson River is one of the major tributaries to the Fraser River that connects to the Pacific Ocean, and that is how our salmon migrate every year. And there's the big run, and that's going to happen when, Ollie?
In 2022, we'll be having our major run. We hope to have lots of salmon come home then.
So first of all, one of the things that as First Nations people, what First Nations people did was they had learned over thousands of years how to become great fishermen. And a lot of it was passed down from generation to generation. They learned about the salmon cycle. They learned about the other fish cycles as well, with the trout, with the lingcod, freshwater lingcod, and with some of the other fish as well. And they learned how to harvest them. So one of the things that is different is with the sockeye run, they occur in the fall. With the trout, they occur in the springtime. And with the freshwater ling, the burbot, they spawn in the wintertime. So they had to know what times of what season did the fish, what time did they spawn. So they would have to know the cycle of the fish and where to harvest them in the rivers and the lakes. And so once they had learned the pattern of the fish, then they had to learn how to make things in order to be able to harvest them. This here is what we call a gill net. Now this here, you can see that there are kind of like diamond shaped holes in the net, and so this one would catch salmon that were kind of small, so you would make yours a little bit bigger. So depending on the size of your salmon, what happens is as the nets are put out into the rivers, they would have it tied out there. It would follow the currents. They had lead weight at the bottoms, and once the salmon would start to run up the river, what happens is they hit into the net, and because of their gills and the shape of their bodies, you can see that their middle part of their body is a lot larger, and so once they hit the nets, they get their gills caught in the net, and that's why they called it a gill net. So that is one type of fishing technique that was used a long time ago. There's a technique to tie up the gill nets as well. We also have these ones. This one here is called a 3-prong spear, and this is just a replica. It's to show you what it could be like and how it was made a long time ago. This one here is another replica, but it's a smaller version as well. But the reason they call it a 3-prong spear is they have 1, 2, 3 prongs. What happens with this is when they're using the 3-prong spear, now this is not the size of a regular sockeye salmon, they'd be probably 2 to 3 times as large, but when they're using the 3-prong spear, they would be in their boat sometimes, they would be on the shores, they would be by the fish weirs, and when they would see the salmon or the fish, they would push in, pierce it with the middle one, and then on the 2 sides it would poke on the sides as well so that they could capture the fish. Then they would bring it in. This one, the way that it's made, it kind of detaches, so they have this part here. This is where it's kind of it's shaped, cone shape here, and they would have another stick that would be attached to it, so once they pierce the fish, this would detach, and they would actually have a piece of rope where they could bring it in. So that one is the 3-prong spear. Now the other one that we have is we have this one. Now this is another, just a mini kind of like a sample. I call this the dip net. Now with the dip net, they would have used the lodgepole pine wood poles because they're skinnier but longer. They also have a hoop that they would use, possibly the red willow, and they would also use a type of material called hemp, dog bane, and the dog bane would be woven much like this one here, like the gill net, and they would make a dip net. Now with this dip net, you can see there's not much of a bottom, but that was just to show the students in my school how to make a dip net. And we didn't get into the intricate part of weaving the dip net neither, or doing that part, because it takes a long time. But here, when they're fishing in the rivers, there's 2 styles of fishing. One is when the current is going down, the river is flowing this way, the salmon are moving up, and so the fishermen would use the dip net and they paddle with the current. And the reason that they paddle with the current is because this bottom of the net needs to stay open, so that when the salmon hit the net, now this net would be bigger because the salmon's bigger, but once they hit the dip net, the fishermen would feel the little thump on their pole, and they quickly pull it up fast enough that they could capture the salmon in the dip net and then bring them to shore. That was another technique that they used as well. Also, with the 3-prong spear and with the dip nets, they could also, what they had done a long time ago, is they would do the pit lights, lamps, and they would put lights like bulrush that was dipped in pitch onto the edges of the canoe, or they'd get the younger men to hold the torches. And fish are very curious. They see a light, and at night when they would fish, the fish would come up and the men would be ready to use their 3-prong spears. Or they could also use the dip nets. So they could use either one, but I think it was more often the 3-prong spears that they would use that. the dip nets are in the river system. So that was another method that they used. And then if they were fishing on the rivers, they would use the gill nets. Now there's also several other methods that are used traditionally. I went to the West Coast and I was visiting family there, and they still practice one of the methods that they do in their territory as well, and that is the rock weirs. So on the Capilano River, on North Vancouver, they build up these rock weirs, and they have because of the ocean, they get a high tide, low tide, and they would build the rock weirs. And so during high tide, when the salmon would come up, they would follow a little maze-like pattern, get stuck in these pools, and then the fishermen would just use their nets and they would harvest the salmon that way. So there was many different ways of doing it. The other method is what they call a fence, a fish weir fence, and that one was kind of like this system here. If you're in the river, they would have a bunch of poles put together, and they would leave an opening on one side so that the salmon could only come through in that direction. So they would have all the poles leaned up, and then the salmon would try to come through, but they were directed into a certain direction, and then the fishermen would be either on their boats looking for them, or they could be even on with poles. They could come in and use their dip nets that way as well. So that was a salmon weir. Another one is another type of weir that's more cylinder shaped, and you have it's kind of funnels, so it gets larger on this side, and then it funnels and gets smaller on the other side, and they kind of put a netting on the inside. So what happens is the fish get kind of directed into these fish weirs, and once they get inside, they go through the kind of like a webbing. Once they go into the webbing, they get caught in the fish weir, and they don't turn around and swim out. What happens with a lot of them, because I asked some of the fishermen about that, is that they drop into the bottom of this fish weir and they'll stay there, and then the fishermen come and they'll check their fish weirs and they'll harvest the fish that way. So those are just some of the ways. They also had another method, and it's more like they would use a fish hook. Now with the fish hook, I don't have that one as an example, but if you can imagine, you had a stick like this with a little bit of a hook on there. Sometimes it's made of bone, sometimes it's made of wood, and they would use that as well, and they would use that to fish for the fish. So those are the different ways that they fished for the different fish in the area and the salmon. They also needed to have rope. So here we have a type of, it's like a type of fish line. It's a needle, fish needle, and that what they would do with this is when they're making their dip nets, this one's is a replica, and it's a small mini, so the hoops could be about this big. They're a lot bigger, so they would use these, and when they're using it, they would start off at the bottom of the dip net. That's the method that I was told go into a basket weavers conference, is they start from the bottom and they keep adding these triangles, and as they're doing this, you can see here, when you're doing this, it's kind of rolls, and so when you're doing it, it should go back and forth, and there's the spindle in the center. So as I'm doing this, I go from one side, and as I'm threading it, I go over the spindle, down, over the spindle, down, over the spindle, and down. So that way, when you're doing the work, you can unravel it at the same time. So those are the fishing needles, I believe. I can't remember. I think they were the fish needles that they used to make that type of for the dip nets. They also use it for this as well, for the gill nets. So they would do it, and they would make these. You have to make it a row across, and then you start going down, a row across and down. And so when you do this style, you have to go all the way across for the length that you want, and then you go down, or else you can go on the side. But when you're using a pole to hold it, I'm not sure exactly. I think we usually do it from the top and we go down, and that way we keep adding more to it. And you can always continue to add more rows when you need them as well. So that's a little bit about the techniques that were used. The ropes here, this is called dog bane. Now this is just a thick rope that was done up, and you can see how thick you can have it. Now I also have examples of a thin rope. So here is another dog bane rope, hemp rope they call it, and you can see that you can make these very small ones. Here's another one here, that's thicker, and here is some examples. Now we're going to get Ollie and Brianna, we're going to break a piece off and we're all going to try and do up our own piece. So what you're going to do is you're going to get one of the smaller pieces, okay, you're going to put it on the ground and you're going to listen to it, so you can kind of zoom in on some of the people as well, but you're going to listen and you hear that cracking sound. You're breaking the wood hull. Once you get to that point, we're going to separate it, and as you can see, there's some wood fibers. This is what we're harvesting right here. So when you do this part, you're trying to keep them in nice long lengths, and what you're going to do is slowly peel off the wood, because it's not the inner wood that you want, it's the outer, kind of like a bark. This is called dog bane. It grows in this area.
Is it a rush?
No, it stays on the banks. It likes to be near rivers and lakes, and it has to have a water supply. So one of the things that I found over the years doing this is I took a workshop in doing the hemp rope making, and one of the things that I found was in the Kamloops area, a lot of the ranchers, because they irrigate their fields from spring to fall, these plants will grow in that area. Now this is an example of a full size stalk, and so it looks like that. In the fall time, it kind of has a red color. In the springtime, it grows along the rivers and lakes or the farmers' fields, and it gets about this tall, and it has a little seed on the top. But I harvested this one. I took off the branches, but it's called dog bane. So it's not good for the cattle, so the farmers don't really like it that much. This part here, we're going to just continue to break off the wood fibers. And it's the outer fiber that we want to harvest. And as you can tell, it's kind of, it doesn't take a lot of time, but if you can imagine hundreds and hundreds of feet of rope that was used to make some of these gill nets and dip nets, and just ropes that they would need for other purposes, then when they did something like this, they really took care of their tools, their fishing items that they would use. They wouldn't just have them laying around. They would make sure that they were taken care of in a good way so that they could have it for years and years. Okay, and look at Ollie's and look at Brianne's. Okay, Brianna, you want to show them yours as well?
Have you done this before, Brianna?
No.
No? Learning something new with us.
Yeah.
So I learned this about maybe 10 years ago, and I go to workshops and I take these, they hire mentors that will teach different things. So I've learned, like, I've been doing some cedar bark baskets. I'm learning to do the dip nets. I've done tule mats, cedar mats. I've done I'm learned pine needle baskets. They have that there as well, and they also had these ones, the dog bane, And what they do is they make flat bags from some of this stuff, but they also can use it to make the fish nets and the gill nets and just the everyday ropes that they would have needed to help them in their daily lives. So here, because a long time ago, First Nations people could not go to the hardware stores or the drugstores to buy any of this stuff. They had to get everything off the land. So now we have the string. Now, when I went to the workshop, they said, oh, we should have had our bear leg. And I was like, I was thinking they were actually talking about a real bear leg. And what they mean is, you take your leg and you have your bare leg there. And with this, you can roll it.
On your bare leg.
Yeah, on your bare leg. Not a real bare leg, because I was really thinking, a real bare leg? What do they mean, right? So you roll it to begin with. There it is. Now here, there is, and you can still see some of that stuff coming off, but it's not very much. Now you're going to twine it. What you're going to do is you're going to hold it in your hands, and you're going to roll it. I'm holding one side, rolling the other side, until you see that it's going to roll upon itself, and then I'm going to start twining it. So it's kind of just like this. Now I didn't use very much of the stick, and there's my rope. So if you tried to break it, Ollie, do you want to do your bare leg? Do you want to show them?
My bare leg up
Okay,
here.
go ahead and show them your bare leg and roll it. Just so that you can get it all kind of like in a more circular, all kind of together. Brianne, get ready to do yours. Your leg. You can do it on your pant leg too, but they say it's better on the bare leg. And
Picks
I
up.
really had a good laugh when I heard them talking about bare leg. And I was like thinking literally a scum-heast leg. A bare leg. Okay, so now, Ollie, you've got yours pretty close up. So Tyler, you can go in closer to Ollie's. So then now what you're going to do is hold it with one hand, roll it with the other. So keep rolling it in the one direction, and then go towards the middle. Keep your string in the middle, and what you're doing is you're just going to, once it starts twining upon itself, that's where you're going to double it. Okay, no, keep your hands together, more closer together, and go towards the middle. Okay, now, okay,
I got a good long piece here.
you do. So now you got to go towards the middle though, like here. So
Yeah.
here's my middle here.
Yeah.
You're going to put yours in the middle, hold it with one hand in the middle, and start twirling it with the other hand. And what happens, just with one hand, hold with one hand.
Yeah.
Okay, you got it in two. Okay, split it in two. Your string, like this. See, you got it put together.
Yeah.
You want to take it apart again? Yeah. Now hold it with one hand.
Yeah.
Turn it with this hand, and one hand only. Start, nope. Okay, I'll show you quickly. So hold this with one hand, and then just turn it with the other. You're keeping it in two pieces yet.
Oh, okay.
Then, as you start, yours is a really nice fine piece, and look at how they could even dye these ones. So then here, you would twine it, and see how it's turning like that?
Yes.
And you keep going. Okay. Then you keep twining it. Hold it with one hand, twine it with the other. And it keeps, and so hold it with one hand still, twine it with the other, and you can kind of twist it on the top every once in a while too. So there it is. So that's how it is. Yours getting, yep. Now try and break it, Ollie. Okay, pull hard.
It's strong.
It's really strong, and that was only one piece of the dog bane. Okay, Brianna, you're doing yours as well. Twine it.
She's got her fine.
Okay, zoom in on her again. Okay. Twine it now. Hold it with one hand, twist it with the other. Yeah, and you're twining it. Yeah, it's kind of like that. And it takes practice and time. And look we only did a small amount. And so to do hundreds of feet or meters of this hemp, you really had to take your time, a lot of dexterity and eye-hand coordination. And when you had your rope, you took good care of that rope and you didn't leave it lying around. So that's how you make hemp. Okay. Okay, so Ollie, you want to show them your end project? That is really good. Brianne, show them yours. And you can dye that, so you can use different colors of plant material to dye it. And that's it. So thank you.
Like Saskatoons?
Yeah, you could use the blueberries and the alderwood, or the even the grape, Oregon grape. The roots turn it a yellow color. So then the huckleberries or Saskatoons are purple.